Last month, I started what I'm hoping is going to become a new series here on my channel where I pick a grocery store and I share with you 10 of my favorite things to purchase at that grocery store. Just quality items that I like that are at a good price. And then I also challenge myself to make a dinner for my family for around $10 worth of ingredients from that store. Last month, my store was Aldi. You seem to really enjoy that video, so we're gonna do it again today, and this time we're gonna shop at Sprouts. Sprouts is one of those grocery stores that I kind of forget about for a while, and then I'll go in and I'll think, man, why don't I shop here more? I really like a lot of the things that they have here. Just my opinion, but I feel like it's a less expensive option to Whole Foods if you like those kinds of products and that kind of quality of food. I appreciate that their produce is usually very good quality. I think a lot of times it's sourced, pretty close by, at least in my area. And also it's a very small store. It's kind of like Aldi. It's a very small footprint, so it's easy to navigate. But unlike Aldi, they have like a fresh butcher and deli counter, and I feel like I can get a lot of really good deals and high quality food just from that specific space in the store. I'm not gonna gatekeep. I'm gonna start my top 10 with what I think is the best deal at that store. On Wednesdays, you can get fresh sushi rolls for $5. At least at my store, they're $5. And when I say fresh, I mean the ladies were actually like making these in the butcher area and putting them out when I was shopping this morning. Like they made these just a few minutes before I put them in my cart. If you're not a sushi fan, I know that may not excite you, but if you are, I feel like you're not gonna find a better deal on decent quality sushi anywhere. My younger daughter, my middle child, loves sushi, so she's gonna be so excited to see these in the refrigerator when she gets home from school. I'm filming this in March of 2026 in Tulsa, Oklahoma, so if you have a Sprouts in your area, do they have that same Wednesday $5 sushi roll deal? I'm curious. Another thing I really appreciate about Sprouts are the bulk bins. It's actually one of the only grocery stores I can think of in my area that still has bulk bin shopping, where you can actually determine the amount that you're purchasing and just pay by the ounce or the pound. And Sprouts has more than just like nuts and candies in their bulk bins, although they do have a great assortment of those things. They also have things like beans and rice and oats and flour and even some specialty flours and sugars and ingredients that you might need for a recipe. And maybe it's something you haven't used before and you don't want to buy like a big bag of it. You just want to have enough for that one recipe until you're sure you're going to use that ingredient again. So I really appreciate that about Sprouts. Sprouts also has an area where you can buy just a very specific, even small amount of certain kinds of spices and seasonings. Like maybe I don't want to buy a whole jar of fennel seed. I just want to buy a little bit for the recipe that I'm trying. If I've got a recipe that calls for like a tablespoon of potato starch, I don't necessarily want to buy a whole bag of that to hang out in my pantry because I'm not going to use that very often, but they have this end cap over in their kind of pantry goods section where you can purchase just a little bit of that item and pay for it like by the ounce. I think it's also worth mentioning that you can buy coffee beans there, and I'm a big fan of Trade coffee. I've been using them for like a year, and my husband and I have our own grinder at home now. But before I knew about Trade and before we had a way to grind our own beans, I used to purchase them at Sprouts because they have a grinder right there so you can grind your coffee fresh. My kids mostly pack their lunches for school, and they have lunch boxes and containers that they use most of the time, but occasionally they need a lunch that is completely disposable because maybe they're going on a field trip or they're like going to a track meet or a sporting event during the day and there just isn't a place for them to hold containers and things like that once the kids have eaten lunch. So it's not all the time, and yes, we can brown bag it, but a lot of times I'll just pick up like a Lunchable. But I recently discovered these lunch packs and I think they're just a really good value. First of all, this sandwich was made fresh, like within the last day. It's not something that has been sitting on a store shelf in a cardboard box for a couple of weeks. They have both turkey and ham sandwiches, and then they also include usually a bag of chips and some kind of fruit, like a fruit cup or an applesauce pouch, a cookie, and also a little bottle of water. This comes out to $6.49. And for what I'm paying for like a large Lunchable, which is what my kids would need if they're taking them, I mean, I'm only paying a little bit more to get this better quality version. So this is what I've been picking up on those handful of days when my kids need something like this that they can eat and then dispose of and not have to worry about chasing around lunch pails and thermoses and stuff while they're at the track meet. And speaking of my children, now is a good opportunity to take a minute to thank today's sponsor, Fabric by Gerber Life. Do I need life insurance? Well, if I've got a family, the wise and prudent answer is yes, I do. But I think a lot of people go without or put this question off because, first of all, we don't like to think about it. We don't like to think about what our families would do if we were no longer here to care for them. And secondly, it can be really overwhelming to think about like the tedious task of filling out papers and going to offices and tracking down different kinds of information and just how long it would take to get what we needed. Well, as for that first thing, with it being something unpleasant that we don't like to think about, my family can't really afford for me to just push it out of my mind. Sometimes we have to do things we don't want to do when we're grown up. That's just called adulting. When it comes to the second reason of it just being overwhelming and tedious, that's where Fabric can step in. Fabric makes securing a high quality term life insurance policy so much less overwhelming by simplifying the process and helping us get it all done online. In fact, you could be covered in under 10 minutes with no health exam required right from your own couch. Fabric is term life insurance you can get done today. It's made for busy parents like me. It's all done online on your own schedule. I mean, seriously, this thing is brutally honest with me about how much time I am spending in front of a screen. So the next time I'm tempted to pull it out and just mindlessly scroll, why not instead just visit the Fabric website, answer a few questions, see what policies they have to offer me. And honestly, I could have a really great life insurance policy in less time than I would spend perusing Amazon for a new swimsuit. Plus, they have a 30-day money-back guarantee, and you can cancel at any time, so where's the risk? Also, they offer free digital wills and tools to invest in your children's future that you can manage right from your phone. Join the thousands of parents who trust Fabric to protect their family. Apply today in just minutes at meetfabric.com/cmindymom. That's MEET fabric.com/cmindymom. Meetfabric.com/cmindymom. And thank you again to Fabric for sponsoring today's video and being a longtime supporter of my channel. As a busy mom in the middle years, I have 3 teenagers, I'm often looking for ways that I can take shortcuts in my kitchen without having to sacrifice too much budget and too much health. Rice is something that we eat a lot because it's such a great vessel for lots of different dishes and a way to economically stretch, the meal and add, some bulk to it. But there's not really a shortcut for cooking it on the stove unless you use minute rice. I'm not a big fan of minute rice, and it takes me 20 minutes to make rice on the stove. Now, I know there are a lot of frozen rices that you can make in the microwave, but often those little bitty pouches only have like 2 or 3 servings, and there's 5 people in my family. So I was super excited to see this today. This was only $3.99, and this is a big 20-ounce package of white rice that will steam in the microwave in 3 minutes. And just for comparison, I can get 18 ounces of steam in the microwave white rice at Walmart for more than it would cost me for this 20-ounce bag. So I thought that was a good deal. I snatched it right up. And if you're wondering about a quick option to go along with that quick rice, something like this, like a chili that's already made up and that's shelf stable that you can just heat and eat. Or Sprouts carries a lot of options in this brand, the Tasty Bite brand, that are like beans or curries that would be really easy to heat up to go along with that rice. And these would be really easy to store for like an emergency, I need dinner really quickly situation. Sprouts is one of the only places where I can find fresh chicken sausage. I'm talking about the kind you have to cook up. And pork sausage is something that is pretty inexpensive, and it's one of the ways that I can flavor like budget-friendly dishes without having to pay a lot for meat. But pork sausage, it's a little higher in fat, and sometimes I want something a little leaner. So I really appreciate that Sprouts sells ground chicken sausage, and they also sell chicken sausage links, like that you can put on, a sheet pan with some veggies and bake up in the oven for a quick sheet pan meal. Now, I know that it is always preferable to have like a homemade meal prepped that you can consume, but sometimes we just need something quick and easy, and I know a lot of us rely on like a protein shake or a protein bar. One thing I appreciate about Sprouts is the variety of protein and energy bars that you can buy in singles. So being able to purchase just one of a protein bar or an energy bar, like a meal replacement bar that you want to try without having to commit to a box, which can be $10, $12, $15 a box. I find that to be really helpful because those are kind of an investment, you know what I mean? So you want to make sure that you're going to like it and that you're going to eat them. Now, Sprouts does run weekly sales like a traditional supermarket would from Wednesday through Tuesday. And if you take a look at that sales flyer, I usually just see it online. I check it out before I go in the store and see if there are any great bargains, maybe something I want to stock up on. Or if you're watching it, you probably can put together a pretty decent, cost-efficient meal plan with the items that are on sale, plus a couple of other things in the store. In my opinion, they also have really great clearance markdowns, especially on their fresh items. Because they have a deli and a butcher counter, they have a lot of items that are like take home and heat and eat, or meats that are pre-marinated, or little meals that are already put together that you can just heat up in the microwave. And if you are watching those yellow stickers, sometimes you can get some really great deals. And also in their meat section, I think that they are pretty good about moving their meat through so that it doesn't stay on the shelf for very long. And that was the case today. I got a really great deal on some beef that was clearanced out for short sale that I'm going to use in tonight's dinner. Tonight for dinner, I'm going for sort of a picadillo style skillet meal. I found a piece of sirloin, like beef sirloin, marked down for quick sale at Sprouts, so I picked that up. I think it was just a little over $5 for about 3/4 of a pound. I also picked up 2 pounds of russet potatoes and a green bell pepper. And I noticed they had green beans, fresh green beans on sale today for 99 cents a pound, so I picked up about a pound of those. I also grabbed a can of tomato paste. I'm only gonna need about half of that. Maybe you already have some on hand. I've got some seasonings and some cooking oil from my spice cabinet, so I'll show you what I'm doing with those as we go. I wanna get my green beans cooking on the stove pretty quick because I think fresh green beans take a while to cook to tender, at least as tender as I like them. So I'm gonna trim the ends and give them a good rinse. And then I'm gonna get them going in a pot of boiling water with a little bit of butter, maybe a pat or two of butter, like a tablespoon, and then probably just a little bit of chicken bouillon to season those. I wanna bring those to a simmer and let them simmer for like at least 30 minutes, but I like my green beans really, really soft. I can remember sitting on the back patio trimming green beans with my mom. Actually, she just used her hands. She would just break off the ends like that, pop it in like that. She really liked fresh green beans, and she always made them on the stove with red potatoes. Did anybody else have green beans boiled with red potatoes growing up? I've got a little bit of oil heating up in my Dutch oven on the stove. I'm gonna take my little sirloin here and I'm going to trim it up a little bit. It's pretty lean, but I'm gonna slice it really, really small. I wanna dice it up into little bitty pieces so that those will cook quickly and simmer and get really tender while they're cooking. And as soon as I have this all sliced up and diced up, I'm gonna pop it into that skillet with the preheated oil just on medium low. And I'm gonna brown these little pieces for a couple of minutes. Normally, I would make this recipe with ground beef. So you can absolutely use ground beef and just brown it up. You probably wouldn't need any oil depending on how fatty your ground beef is, like if you're using 85-15 or 80-20. This sirloin's pretty lean, so I wanted to put a little oil there at the bottom. And then while this is browning for another minute, I'm gonna chop up my green bell pepper and pop that in here as well. To season this, I'm gonna use some minced garlic, about a tablespoon, onion powder, garlic salt, paprika, and cumin, about a half a teaspoon of each of those. Okay, my meat and my pepper, my veggies and my seasonings have been sauteing together for about 5 minutes. Starting to get very fragrant. I can smell that pepper in there. And now I'm gonna add some tomato paste. I'm not gonna use this whole can. I'm gonna use about half of it, which would be about 5 tablespoons. About a tablespoon of bouillon. I'm using beef bouillon. 2 cups of water. I'm gonna stir that together and bring it up to a simmer, and while I am bringing it up to a low boil, I'm gonna peel and chop my potatoes into little 1-inch cubes. My pot is simmering now. I've got my potatoes right here, all diced up. You can see that they're kind of like little pieces, little 1-inch pieces. I'm gonna stir those in. I wanna reduce the heat to low, cover it, and I'm gonna let this simmer for about 30 minutes. I'll probably check on it periodically, like maybe every 10 minutes or so, make sure that there's enough water. If I feel like the water's getting a little too low or it's starting to run the danger of burning on the bottom, I can always add a little bit more water later, but potatoes aren't gonna soak up as much water as like a pasta or a rice. If you wanted to stretch this meal or make the portions a little bit better, you could serve it with some rice or some beans, or rice and beans. I think it's also really yummy with a couple of tortillas, and you can put that picadillo inside the tortilla and eat it kind of like a taco. And all in all, I spent about $10.42 on the ingredients that I purchased at Sprouts today to make this meal, so I think that's not too shabby. If you are a Sprouts shopper, let me know in the comments below what are some of your favorite things to pick up at Sprouts. And as always, thank you for watching. YouTube thinks you might want to watch this video next. If so, I'll see you there.